My roommate and I moved into an old apartment just outside of Portland last winter. It was cheap, which was the main draw, but it had this weird charm. Original hardwood floors, these old stained glass windows, and a fireplace that didn't work but looked pretty in photos. The apartment was on the top floor of a 3-story building. Below us was a quiet older couple. Across the hall was a nurse who worked nights. The place was always silent. It was exactly what we needed. The only thing that stood out when we first toured it was a small, discolored patch on the ceiling in my bedroom. The landlord waved it off, saying it was from an old leak that had since been repaired. I didn't think much of it. Just an ugly stain. About a month in, I noticed the stain seemed darker, like it had freshened somehow. I figured it was just the lighting, until one night, I woke up around 3 a.m. and swore I heard a soft dripping noise. I turned on the light. Nothing. The ceiling looked the same, but I couldn't shake the feeling. The next night, the same thing happened. 3 a.m. Soft dripping. When I got up this time, I placed a glass under the spot, just to be safe. In the morning, there was about a tablespoon of dark brown liquid in the glass. It smelled like rust and something else I couldn't place. I told my roommate, and we both agreed to call the landlord. He brushed it off again. Said the leak was sealed, and any dripping must be condensation. Just paint over the stain if it bothers you, he said. That night, the dripping got louder. Not constant, but timed. Drip. Wait. Drip. Wait. I moved my bed to the opposite wall and wore headphones to sleep. The next morning, there were 2 glasses full of that same brown liquid. We decided to check the attic space above my room. There wasn't supposed to be one, but we found a small ceiling hatch in the hallway with a rusted pull string. It took us nearly an hour to get it open, and we had to borrow a ladder from the neighbor downstairs. The air that came down was stale, metallic. My roommate climbed up first and immediately gagged. She didn't say anything at first, just handed me her phone. She had taken a picture. It was a mattress, completely stained. There were ropes nailed into the support beams above it, and a large plastic tarp folded off to the side. Next to the mattress, a stack of Polaroids. Dozens of them. I flipped through just a few and immediately felt sick. They were photos of different women, tied down, some with eyes open, some not. We didn't say anything. We didn't even touch the rest. We called the police. They came, sealed the attic, took the photos and the mattress. Never gave us any answers. Just said an investigation was ongoing. A few weeks went by. We moved our beds into the living room, refused to sleep under that ceiling. I started sleeping during the day. Something about 3 a.m. terrified me now. Then one night, I woke up on the couch. I don't know why. I just sat up suddenly and looked toward the hallway. The attic string was swinging. Not just lightly like someone had pulled it down and let go. My roommate was still asleep. I walked over slowly and stood under it. I could feel cold air pushing down. It wasn't open, but I swear something up there was breathing. We stayed at a friend's place after that. Came back a few days later to grab our stuff. The landlord texted us, saying he needed to access the unit. We never answered. Never went back. Last I checked, the apartment still listed same price, same photos. But now there's no mention of the attic. And the ceiling stain. It was never painted over. Let me start by saying, I don't believe in ghosts, or at least, I didn't. I'm rational to a fault. I need facts, logic, proof. I'm the person who turns off horror movies halfway through because they're too unrealistic. But what happened after we moved in? No movie I've seen comes close. My girlfriend and I recently bought our first home together. A 2-story townhouse in a quiet neighborhood, tree-lined, peaceful, the kind of place where every lawn looks manicured and people wave at you even if they don't know your name. It was our dream place. We even rescued a cat together, Bella, who quickly made the window seat her throne. Everything felt perfect, except for the house to our right. It was odd, like it had been half renovated and then just forgotten. The siding was stripped in places, windows clouded like no one had opened them in years. At night, a single light glowed in the attic window. Not warm, cozy light, just this pale, flickering bulb like an old gas station bathroom. We asked our realtor about it. She got weirdly cagey, said something vague like, "Oh, the owner started renovations, but it's been vacant for a while, but the mail never piled up. The lawn was always mysteriously mowed. Someone was maintaining it. We tried not to overthink it. Everyone has that one weird neighbor, right?" Then, about a week after we moved in, Bella stopped sitting in the window. She would stare at the house next door for hours, her ears flattened, growling low and guttural like I'd never heard. One night, she hissed so violently I thought she was going to launch through the glass. That's when the noises started. It was subtle at first, a dragging sound, like furniture being pulled slowly across wood, always around 2 o'clock or 3 a.m. Then came the tapping, rhythmic, sharp, like something tapping on our bedroom wall, which shared a border with the other house. Except that wall had no rooms on the other side, it was directly against the empty neighbor's attic. We convinced ourselves it was mice, maybe raccoons, anything but something more, deliberate. One morning, I stepped outside to water the plants and noticed our welcome mat was flipped over. Not just shifted, completely flipped, face down. No wind could have done that. I bent down to fix it and found something underneath. 3 fingernail clippings, dirty, jagged, human. I didn't tell my girlfriend. She had already been having trouble sleeping. No need to add fuel to whatever this was. The next night, I heard footsteps above our bedroom. Clear as day, slow, heavy, like someone pacing back and forth. I crept up to the attic and opened the hatch. Empty, cold, dusty, nothing but insulation and boxes. The following weekend, our front door camera picked up movement at 3:16 a.m. Just static at first, then a silhouette. A tall figure standing perfectly still on our front porch for 11 minutes, not ringing the bell, not moving, not looking into the camera, just standing, slightly off-center. When I played it back, the timestamp glitched halfway through. It jumped from 3:18 to 3:12 and then caught up. It looped backward before correcting. I've worked in IT. I've never seen that happen on modern systems. We called the police. They found nothing. Suggested maybe it was a prank or a camera malfunction. But after that, things escalated. We began finding things in our house that didn't belong to us. A child's sock under the couch, a broken teacup on the stairs. One morning, we both woke up with identical scratches on our shoulders. 3 thin lines, red but not bleeding, as if something tried to grip us while we slept. I set up a second motion camera, this one in the hallway by the back door. A few nights later, it caught something. At exactly 3 a.m., the sensor triggered. The footage showed our back door slowly creaking open. No wind, no one visible. Then, a shadow passed by. It wasn't a person, it was person-shaped, but taller than the doorway, and thin, impossibly thin, like it had no substance, just form. The door closed. It never opened again, and no one came in. At least, not that we could see. My girlfriend wanted to leave. I did too, but we'd sunk everything into this house. We were barely scraping by as it was, so we stayed. But we slept with the lights on and the television playing static to drown out the tapping. Last week, it got worse. I came home from work and found Bella missing. The window seat empty, not a hair left behind. We searched every inch of the house under furniture, in cabinets, even behind the drywall panel in the basement. Nothing. It was like she'd never existed. Her food bowl was gone. Her litter box was clean and unused. That night, I had a dream. I was standing in the attic of the neighbor's house, only it wasn't abandoned anymore. It was fully furnished, Victorian-style furniture, lace curtains, wallpaper that moved if you looked too long. I walked toward the window and saw Bella sitting on the sill. She turned to look at me and whispered in a voice that wasn't hers, "I live here now." I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. The attic light next door was flickering again. 2 nights later, we heard the front door creak open. We both sat up in bed, holding hands. The footsteps echoed down the hall. Slow, heavy, closer. The bedroom door opened. No one was there, but the lights died. We moved out the next morning. We didn't pack. We didn't wait. We just ran. Yesterday, I checked Zillow. The house we left is already listed again. Same price, same photos, but the description has a new line. Cat-friendly neighborhood, quiet neighbors, shared wall with unique energy. I clicked on the listing for the house next door. Still off-market, still under renovation. Last updated, 3:16 a.m. I used to babysit a lot when I was in high school, mostly for families in my neighborhood. Nothing too crazy, movies, snacks, bedtime. You get the idea. But one house still makes my stomach turn. Even though it's been years, I don't tell this story often, because most people just laugh it off, say I imagined it, but I know what I experienced, and I've never accepted another babysitting job since. It was a Friday evening. A couple down the street, Mr. and Mrs. Bell, asked if I could watch their 7-year-old daughter, Clara. They were going to a late dinner and said they'd be home by midnight. I said yes, mostly because the pay was good. And honestly, Clara was a sweet kid, never caused trouble. They lived in an older house at the end of our block. Big, creaky, with a weird layout. I'd only been inside once before, but it always felt off. Not in a haunted way, just cold. Like the air never really moved. The night started fine. Clara and I played board games and watched cartoons. Around 9:30, I gave her a snack, helped her brush her teeth, and put her to bed. Her room was upstairs, last door on the left. Before she fell asleep, she said something weird. "Don't let the closet open." I thought she was being silly, so I smiled and said, "Okay." Closet stays shut. I even got up and pushed the sliding door all the way closed. It clicked into place. But as I turned off the light and started to leave, she added, "If it opens, don't look inside." I paused. "Why not?" She didn't answer, just pulled the covers up to her eyes. I figured she'd watch some creepy YouTube video or something. Kids do that. I told her she was safe and closed the door behind me. I went back downstairs and settled into the living room. I didn't want to be glued to my phone in case Clara needed anything, so I muted the television and just kind of relaxed. That's when I noticed the ticking. It was faint, but rhythmic, like an old clock. I looked around but didn't see anything. They didn't have a grandfather clock or anything like that, so I brushed it off. Maybe 10 minutes later, I heard soft footsteps upstairs. I assumed Clara was getting up to use the bathroom, but then I remembered the Bell's hallway had motion-activated lights, and nothing turned on. Still, I waited. No toilet flush, no sink, just silence. Then another set of footsteps. Slower, heavier, like someone pacing just outside her door. I stood up. Now, this might sound dumb, but I didn't go upstairs right away. Something in me, this pit in my gut, told me not to. So I just stood at the foot of the stairs, listening. "Clara?" I called up. No answer. I climbed slowly, one hand gripping the railing, trying not to make noise. As I reached the top, I noticed the hallway light had finally turned on, and Clara's bedroom door was slightly open. I crept toward it. The door made this low, creaking noise as I pushed it. Her nightlight was still glowing, casting soft shapes on the walls. She was asleep, or pretending to be. I walked over and gently shook her shoulder. She blinked, then looked at me confused. "Did you get up just now?" I asked. She shook her head. "Did you hear footsteps?" She just stared at me, then whispered, "Don't open the closet." My blood went cold. I turned slowly. The closet door, one of those sliding panel types, was open about 3 inches. And I swear to you, I closed it earlier, clicked it shut. I wanted to go look. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe. Or just to prove to myself that it was nothing. I took a step. Clara sat up sharply. "Don't." Her voice was too clear, too serious for a kid her age. "I saw it once," she said. "It doesn't like when you look." My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I reached out anyway. And just before I touched the door, something scraped from inside. Not a creak, not a bump. A slow dragging sound, like nails on wood. I pulled Clara out of bed, scooped her up, and backed out of the room. We slept downstairs with the lights on. I kept a fireplace poker next to me the whole night. When her parents got home, I didn't tell them everything. Just that Clara had a nightmare and that we stayed in the living room. They laughed, paid me in cash, said I was a great sitter. I never went back. A few weeks later, I saw the Bells at the grocery store. Clara wasn't with them. Mrs. Bell mentioned they were renovating the upstairs, especially Clara's room. She said the wood inside her closet was rotting, like something had been clawing at it. Then she smiled, completely unaware, and said, "We always thought it was rats. But I know it wasn't rats. And I still hear that ticking sometimes, even when I'm home alone." I was 26 and had just moved back to my hometown after years of working out of state. I didn't have much lined up when I got back, so I was taking whatever I could get. After about 2 weeks of searching, I landed a job as an overnight stock clerk at a small grocery store that stayed open 24 hours. It wasn't glamorous, but I figured it would be easy enough quiet nights. Just me and a couple other employees stocking shelves until morning. On my first shift, I showed up around 11:45 p.m. The manager, a guy named Rick, gave me a quick rundown of what to do. He was only there to close up the office before leaving for the night. So once he left, it would just be me and one cashier. The store was in a quiet area right off a 2-lane highway, surrounded by empty lots and a patch of woods behind the parking lot. Nothing else nearby but a closed gas station across the street. It honestly felt a little eerie even before the night started. The first couple of hours went by slow. I was restocking the dairy section while the cashier, some teenager named Max, stayed up front playing on his phone. There weren't many customers coming in, maybe one every 20 minutes, and they were all just grabbing snacks or cigarettes and leaving. It was around 2 a.m. when things started to feel different. I was in the back near the storage room when I heard the chime at the front door. Nothing unusual, but when I peeked down the aisle, I didn't see anyone. I walked out toward the front to see if Max was ringing someone up, but he was standing there alone, looking toward the entrance with this weird look on his face. I asked him what was up, and he said he saw someone come in, but they just walked off without saying anything. We both looked around, but the store was empty. The front doors were still locked open in that welcome position, so it wasn't like they'd left already. I brushed it off as maybe he was just seeing things. But when I went back to stocking, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. A few minutes later, I heard something metallic fall in one of the aisles, like a can or a shelf bracket. I walked over to check, and there was a single can of soup lying in the middle of the floor from an aisle I hadn't even started working on yet. I picked it up, looked around. Nothing. Just silence, and that low hum from the refrigerators. Not long after, the chime at the front door went off again. This time, both of us were sure we didn't see the doors move. It was like the sensor went off on its own. Max was starting to freak out a little. He kept asking if we had cameras, so I went into the office to check the monitors. That's when things got worse. On one of the feeds, I saw someone standing in the back corner of the store, near the storage room door, just standing there. Their head was tilted like they were staring at the ground, and their arms were hanging limp at their sides. At first, I thought maybe a late customer had wandered back there without us noticing. But when I looked up from the monitor and turned toward that exact aisle, there was no one there. I walked over with my flashlight, heart pounding, but the aisle was empty. I even checked the storage room, and the door was locked from the outside just like I left it. That was the point where I seriously considered calling the manager. But then something happened that made me forget about everything else. Max started yelling from the front. I ran out and saw him pointing toward the glass doors. There was a man standing outside. He was tall, thin, dressed in dark clothes. His face was obscured by the shadow of his hood, but he wasn't moving. He was just staring in at us through the glass. We both froze, trying to figure out what the hell he was doing there. Max went to grab the phone to call the police, and the second he did, the guy turned and walked out of view toward the side of the building. I told Max to lock the doors while I went to check the side entrance. The moment I stepped into that narrow side hallway, the emergency exit door handle started rattling violently. It sounded like whoever was outside was trying to force it open. I backed away slowly, trying not to make a sound, when the rattling suddenly stopped. The silence after that was worse than the noise. I ran back to the front, told Max to stay behind the counter, and we waited. Minutes went by. Then, out of nowhere, the store lights flickered just for a second, but long enough to make every aisle look like a scene from a horror movie. That's when I saw it. On the far end of an aisle, someone was standing there again. Same tilted head, same posture. Before I could even move, the lights flickered a second time, and they were gone. That was it for me. I told Max we were leaving and locked the doors on our way out. We sat in my car until the sun came up, and neither of us saw anything else. The manager didn't believe a word of it when I told him the next day, and he even laughed when I said I quit. But I don't care. Whatever was in that store that night, it wasn't just some random guy.